COVID-19 outbreak has turned our societies upside down. People have responded in different ways, setting up online groups to help those in need, or stripping supermarket shelves in a frenzy of panic buying. Our social fabric is being tested. Could it change forever? This is Roundtable. Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Coronavirus has been a shock to our societies like nothing we have seen before in peacetime. Could the changes that have been forced upon us temporarily have a permanent effect on the way we interact?
Stay home and away from others. That has been the message to citizens in countries around the world to stop the spread of coronavirus and to save lives. But it is a challenge to our sense of society, and the social fabric of nations is being tested. Some countries have seen outbreaks of panic buying at supermarkets, with shelves stripped of items like pasta and toilet roll, leaving others unable to get the things they need. Social distancing and self-isolation has caused many people to feel lonely, depressed, and to look for other ways to stay connected with their loved ones. But thousands of people have joined online community groups in efforts to look after the most vulnerable in society, volunteering to pick up shopping, deliver medicine, or have regular phone calls. So with restrictions in place for the time being, our society is going through changes that will outlast the coronavirus outbreak.
Joining us at the roundtable from London is Dimitrios Tsivrikos, who is a consumer psychologist and behavioural scientist at University College London. We have Candace Reading, who is the editor of online magazine Tower Hamlets Mums, and someone who started a community group in the wake of coronavirus. And we also have Rodolfo Leyva, who is a fellow in media and communications at the London School of Economics. Thank you very much indeed for being with us on Roundtable. So we've seen a whole range of human behaviour since this crisis started, and something that emerged early on was this panic buying, particularly in the UK at least, of toilet roll. What drives panic buying? Why did we see that?
I think one of the key aspects that we've actually observed during this panic buying moment is that people at times of uncertainty, they're looking and they're engaging into irrational behaviour. And in most cases, as shoppers, we are not as rational as when it comes to our own shopping. But when it comes to an uncertain situation, panic buying was our only attempt to actually try and gain control of a situation that we had no control.
And Candace, was this something you experienced? I certainly found it difficult to get hold of certain items at the supermarket, at least in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing all the shelves sweep clear of things like toilet roll and hand sanitizer, it just really contributed to a lot of the panic, I think, generally.
And Rodolfo, do you think panic buying is, as Dimitrios suggests, an irrational way to react?
Yeah, I would agree very much with that sort of kind of construct or conception of it. Yeah, it is like Dimitrios said, sort of a way of for people trying to get sort of a semblance of control over an uneasy and unsettling situation.
So is the natural reaction in a crisis to prioritise yourself? And if so, why?
I think biologically speaking, when we are being threatened, we're going into a mode where we're trying to survive. We're trying to do whatever it takes to maintain or collect resources to make sure that we gain, everything that we might need for survival. However, that's a very instant. This is a very automatic response that will not actually sort of prevail as we go through or experience a crisis.
I think it's also been interesting from my perspective, seeing as much as the panic buying has been happening and people looking out for themselves, it was incredible the response that we got to the mutual aid group. So people actually really wanting to look after other people. And I don't know if they're doing that in equal numbers and if it balances each other out.
Well, Candace, you were somebody who started a mutual aid group. What drove you to do that? Why do people react in a positive way, a non-selfish way, do you think?
It might be a little bit of that, wanting to control things as well, wanting to have something that that makes it make sense for you. For me, it was really realizing that the area of Tower Hamlets has really high child poverty and just a real drive to want to do something in case we needed each other. Yeah, and just this sense that communities were going to become really important the more socially isolated we were.
Dimitrios, you're a behavioural scientist, so surely you have some insight into why people look out for others, perhaps more than themselves in times like these.
Absolutely. I think when we are living in a stressful environment, one of the key things that we actually observe, and is well documented in the literature, we tend to become more collective. We tend to actually understand that collectively we have a lot more power than others. We are social animals. We keep forgetting this just because we live very stressful lives. Everyone is trying to achieve, on their own goals. But at times of crisis, we really, we are hardwired to be connected with others. And there are different ways that we can actually do that in a meaningful way. So the community has to prevail, and perhaps maybe the only way for us to actually use to deal with such crisis.
So why do we turn towards community? What does it offer us?
I think the community component offers us a sense of selfhood. It offers us offering that we are part of something bigger, that we're not fighting something on our own, which is, however talented or resourceful we might be, on our own we might not be able to achieve such bigger goals. Being a part of a collective actually allows us to feel psychologically safe, as well as increase our power and access to other people, that we can have both resources as well as at the same time knowledge to fight a particular crisis.
And Candace, you're nodding to that. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with all of that. Also, just this sense of just being part of something, as you said, but and protecting people who might not be able to fight for themselves, and that kind of feeling that if nobody does something, what will happen to them, was a big driver for, I think, many of the people involved.
And Rodolfo, is this something you've experienced?
Somewhat, and I am sort of. It's good, and I agree that it's as a way to survive this is through more sort of collective and communal engagement. My only concern is that as sort of resources and level of community solidarity and resilience start to maybe be more exhausted, that people will turn much more hostile and be less sort of communally oriented.
Dimitrios, you are nodding. You're nodding. Do you think that we are at a risk of this community coming together being a short-lived thing?
I think, psychologically speaking, yes, we do need the collective, we need communities and so on. But I think Rodolfo is absolutely right. As resources will be running low, as the crisis perhaps may be intensified, fear could kick in. So we can't simply only rely upon this sort of initiative or lovely initiatives such as local communities and networks of people supporting each other. I think we need that level of support and that level of understanding to be coming from official partners as well. I think we'll be needing a lot more work from a government body as well as other formal bodies to actually assist us in building such communities. I think for the time being, we see a great recognition that we need to be supported. However, there are no structures or frameworks out there to actually make us connect in a more meaningful way, teach us how to actually connect with other communities. The initiatives from everyday citizens like myself and other people are great, but I think they need to be balanced up with something a lot more meaningful from a government perspective that could assist us to connect and build better communities, both online as well as physically when that would be allowed.
Yeah, I would agree with this as well. This need to balance it with, especially for people who need long-term help, like more than just a pop to the shops or a friendly phone call. If you are extremely vulnerable, we have been working with the council to signpost people to different services that they might need. But I think essentially what we've begun is just the will to be a good neighbor and to kind of redefine what that means. I think our societies used to be much more interconnected. And while there is this threat of us running out and even, volunteer burnout and that kind of thing, I also think that we have seen difficult times in the past, and hopefully kindness begets kindness. And when someone is without, that I think this is the thing that's really hard for us to establish is when one person is without something now, that it has something. Sorry, one person has something now. That doesn't mean that they won't have it later on down the road. And the person who isn't vulnerable now might be vulnerable later. So really, it's about kind of just getting some kind of network together, but also working with those partnerships, and also, it's become really interesting, the sort of networking with the established charities and people who and local businesses as well. So it's not just been individuals and neighbors. There have been people coming on to the Facebook groups and things, reaching out for things like volunteers or spaces or that kind of thing. So yeah.
And do you think, obviously, people wanting to help other people is an end in itself, but do you think there's an element of people making their own experience better, making themselves feel better by being able to reach out to help other people?
Yes, definitely. I just looking, my neighborhood group, when I saw how many people were on it, made me feel really good. It was like, oh, that's all my neighbors, and they're one of the bigger groups in the area, and it just felt really good to be surrounded by people who wanted to help, especially when you're looking around and there are, panic buyers and all of this crazy other side of it. So yeah, just connecting with people and also just doing something good. Someone saying thank you to you for making things better in their lives. It does feel good.
And Rodolfo, do you think we need this kind of communication between people in order for us to function healthily?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The necessary kind of psychological component of human beings is that we do need to communicate and interact with each other. Even the most sort of misanthropic of us still has some craving for human contact.
I wonder also in this, is there something of the concept of karma in that if I do something good for you or for society, that perhaps nothing bad will happen to me? Do you think there's a psychological element of that in this kind of situation?
I think there is almost that psychological barter that whatever I'm going to put into it is hopefully I'm going to be sort of receiving something. People might call it energy, or people might call it treatment, and so on. However, in this particular situation, what we are realizing is that our level of well-being, our level of actually whether we're going to be surviving this or not, doesn't simply only rely upon what we do in terms of how well we are protected, what we eat, how we actually engage with ourselves as a whole, but actually rely upon how others in the community behave. So the more we are becoming ambassadors of what is needed, such as self-isolate and keeping the hygiene recommendations that were recommended, then the more likely we are that we're going to survive. So we are discovering for the very first time that level of a network is not just simply an entertainment thing, but actually will keep us alive if we keep a healthy network and a strong community.
And I wanted to ask you all a little about the concept of togetherness. At these times, we're being asked to be apart from those we love, from friends and family, but at the same time, perhaps, as you just alluded to, think collectively, think of society as a team and work together to do social distancing in order to keep the team going. How are we managing this concept of togetherness? Are we succeeding at it, do you think?
It's interesting. I have family all over the world, and some people that I haven't spoken to for years have shared things with me, like photographs from their childhood where, my father was pictured and that kind of thing. I think even old friends and speaking to friends who have been speaking to friends that they haven't seen for years, haven't had time to kind of connect to. Living in London is such a hustle and bustle. So the fact that we're all forced to slow down, even though we can't physically meet up, it makes us realize now that we can't meet up, how important and how lovely it was to actually be in the same room and be able to give someone a hug. So I think it will change the way we go about in our lives, and I think hopefully we'll be more connected after this.
Dimitrios, would that be your experience too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's giving us an opportunity. It's giving us a chance to rethink and reconsider who we are, who are our closest people, who we rely to, who do we need to support. I think we will come out of this a completely different, individuals. We're going to come out of this as a different community. However, I do hope that sort of sense of community, that sense of togetherness, that sense of, being out there for each other will actually last. Because with any psychological change, with any behavioral change, so to speak, it requires a great deal of work. Just because we have experienced something in such intensity doesn't always necessarily make us always feel that we are going to be together. So I think we need to grasp this opportunity to extend this feeling, to allow each other, to support each other after the crisis, beyond the crisis. So it's a great opportunity. Hopefully we can use this platform.
I would agree with that. To the extent that this current kind of, sense of togetherness is lasting is impossible to say without obviously any empirical research to be conducted. But it would be nice, I think, if this, these current levels of sort of communal belonging and sociality and definitely should extend past these pandemics. And to the extent that we can, as a group, sort of agitate for more, social democratic institutions that can help to maintain these levels.
And as you said there, of course, it is too early to say, but what would be all of your prediction on that? Do you think this will be the start of a lasting societal change, or are we just going to revert back to where we were?
That's a very good question. A really good question. I'd like to stay positive, because I think we are living at an era where new generation are using technology in a very different way. People are starting to question, the current establishment, how we communicate, how we consume, the way that, our own political system is currently operating. So I do hope that this particular moment that we're taking in time, that sort of reflection, will allow us to think better, connect better, and actually prioritize what are the key components that we need to survive. And they're not just simply physicality, but it's also that level of togetherness. So I do hope that we will see people becoming a lot more aware of it. And hopefully with that level of awareness and a bit of help from both communities as well as government bodies, we can ride this wave and come out of this a lot better as a community, as people, as governments, as countries.
Candace, what do you think? What's your prediction? Will it last?
Well, I'd really like to say that it will. And one thing that does concern me slightly is this kind of us and them approach, which you get a lot of, even sort of government and media talking about people who are behaving in certain ways versus other ways. And I am a little bit concerned about the kind of deflection of blame as we look for answers to why things are getting as difficult as they are. So I think as long as we are aware that this is happening, and we seek to really look at what has created this, and there's the social democracy that we really do need, and we try and unify as much as possible, rather than we have all sorts, because there's a lot of activism involved with mutual aid. So there are people who are really suffering right now, and they're looking for ways to kind of survive, and then there are others who don't really agree with their strategies. I think rental strikes has been a big sort of area of conflict for our group. You have your landlords and you have your tenants, but really what perhaps should be happening is more of a universal basic income, for everyone. So we aren't having these arguments. And I think I'm wary of this sort of, blaming each other or blaming this or blaming that. And I hope that I just continue to see more community, and that we do push for a better society and more constructive government, supportive government.
And Rodolfo, putting you on the spot, will this last?
So I want my fellow panelists to be right, but I'm much more cynical. I think that the last sort of 40 years of sort of societal conditioning to be much more individualistic and atomized. I think that once this pandemic is over, we're going to sort of relapse. On average, most people are going to relapse and go back to that sort of much more self-interested, much more individualistic mentality. Although I really hope I'm wrong about that.
And a lot of this new community feeling has been initiated in the digital space, online, for example. Does that perhaps mean that it's got a less long-lasting legacy? Does the way that we're communicating make a difference to the validity of it?
I'm not sure about the validity of it. I mean, it's a perfectly fine and definitely necessary way to communicate with each other, especially right now. To the extent, though, that these current levels of sort of internet communication are going to be sustained after the pandemic, it's uncertain. And it's also not necessarily a good thing. We do know that constant sort of internet interaction has a lot of negative effects. So, for example, a couple of Italian studies from like prior to the pandemic, but which are sort of very relevant now, have shown that people who use smartphones, for example, have less quality time with their friends, which in turn decreases subjective well-being. Similar increasing of social media, for example, decreases social trust, which in turn decreases subjective well-being. So while current kind of levels of engaging through these sort of online realms are obviously necessary, I'm not sure that they are sustainable, and it's probably not a good thing to keep them going after the pandemic.
So are we doing more harm than good with these digital communities then?
In the current instance, they're necessary. So not, and they probably won't have any sort of lasting effects, provided that that we get through this fairly quickly. But again, if they're maintained post-pandemic, then we might be possibly having some negative impact with those.
Dimitrios.
Absolutely, I will agree with Rodolfo. This is a really, really paramount, important message. Whereas I think the communities have all the best intentions for all of us to connect digitally, for all of us to stay connected. That's a great thing, absolutely. However, excessive use of social media, excessive use of consumption of news, excessive use of smartphones is not an ideal thing for us to connect. There's not an ideal way for us to actually build bridges. And sadly, I think this crisis also has taught us that we were not prepared. We're not prepared to live in a digital world. We're not prepared to work from home. We're not prepared to actually know or how to utilize modern technology to survive properly. I think the element of functionality has been met, but the idea of mental health and the link between how we use technology and how that actually has affected our mental health has never been addressed until now, till we've actually been faced with that raw reality that actually social media and technology can actually do more harm at times than good.
And Candace, obviously your community is based online. How much of a difference does it make to you that you haven't been able to see the people you're helping face to face, and neither have the people you're working with, the volunteers?
I think there is a certain amount of trust that when you can see someone face to face, you can understand a little bit more of their intentions. That said, there have been lots of people talking about how nice it would be to meet in person after this is over. My head's been buried in digital communications for the last 3 weeks. And yeah, it does tend to kind of wear you down a little bit. And I'm trying to distance myself a little bit and just create a bit more sort of a boundary around things. But yeah, I think at the moment it serves a really good purpose. I feel that people will want to meet up more in public. And be together, and maybe these days of being buried in our mobile phones, hopefully we will have reached like a saturation and want to be in the same room and communicate more together.
So I wonder
Sorry, did that answer?
No, that was lovely. I wonder if you all think then, finally, that this will be perhaps a polarizing experience or a unifying experience. Perhaps neither. Perhaps it's a range, but will it bring people together, or will it make people more isolated?
It will really depend on sort of national context, local context. It's going to vary considerably.
So an experience that's unique to the individual or the community?
Both, probably.
I think it depends on what we do after this. Like, I don't think people will generally carry on without some kind of, I don't know, organized activity. I think we may have to make a big deal out of going to our local park. I mean, we've had the great get together and the big lunch, and all those things won't be happening this year. But maybe the next one will be a chance for us all to get out there and really congregate and celebrate the end, when it comes.
And Dimitrios, final word to you.
Absolutely, I think it's a great example, and I think if I had to use a metaphor, it's just almost trying to quit on, a bad habit, say for instance, consuming too much sugar. We might have a successful period where we're doing all the right stuff, we're avoiding cakes and we're eating fruit instead and so on. But then when we are being open again to be able to eat whatever we want to be eating, it will take work. It will take work for us to actually stay away from the cakes. It will take work from staying away from more toxic relationships, toxic communities. It will take work for all of us to stay together. And I think I love that community feeling that communities have actually been addressing and putting together. But we need help. We need government help and we need official help to allow us to build together. So I think togetherness is a great opportunity, but without the right support, I'm afraid we might get back to normal.
Okay, many thanks to my guests, Dimitrios Tsivrikos, Candace Reading and Rodolfo Leyva. And remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for TRT World Roundtable. But for now, from me and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.